Ignition sequence start.
Good morning, and welcome to this look over the shoulders of the International Space Station Flight Control Team members on console at NASA's Johnson Space Center. These are the folks charged with keeping a close eye on space station systems while assisting the Expedition 66 crew members as they work through their daily agenda of science support and station maintenance. Commander Anton Shkaplerov and his crewmates have been busy with all of that this week, on top of their work supporting the arrival of 3 new short-term crewmates who docked to the station in a Soyuz spacecraft.
Houston Station on Space to Ground.
Welcome to the 400th episode of Space to Ground. I'm Leah Cheshire Mustachio. 2 Japanese spaceflight participants arrived at the orbiting laboratory earlier this week. On Wednesday, December 8th, 3 people launched to the International Space Station aboard the Soyuz MS-20 spacecraft.
And liftoff.
Spaceflight participants Yusaku Maezawa and Yozo Harano were led by Commander and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Misurkin as the spacecraft launched at 2:38 a.m. Eastern Time and docked just over 6 hours later. The trio joined the 7 astronauts and cosmonauts living aboard the space station for a scheduled 11-day mission before returning to Earth. This week, NASA announced the 10 newest astronaut candidates out of 12,000 applicants.
Let's give them a big round of applause.
The 2021 NASA astronaut candidates were announced on Monday, December 6th. Over the next 2 years, these astronauts will train at NASA's Johnson Space Center in disciplines like space station systems, Russian language, spacewalk training, T-38 flying, and more. These candidates may someday travel to the space station, commercial destinations, and eventually the moon with the Artemis program. A new facility is finding its home aboard the orbiting laboratory this week. On Tuesday, installation began of the flow boiling and condensation experiment. The goal of this new facility is to collect data about two-phase flow and heat transfer in microgravity. We'll need to generate more power during longer space missions, meaning the heat produced needs to be dissipated. Two-phase thermal management systems reduce the size and weight of the system and make heat removal more efficient. This experiment is yet another way the work being done on the space station continues to prepare us for future destinations deeper into the solar system. That's all for today on Space to Ground. We'll see you next week.
The International Space Station crew members are also on the lookout for the next delivery, due later this month, when a SpaceX Cargo Dragon ship arrives with a new load of science experiments and technology demonstrations. Here's a few of the highlights of what's on the way to space. Each group of astronauts and cosmonauts who complete a long-duration mission to the International Space Station spend time on a unique subset of the kinds of experiments that are headed to the station later this month. Recently, the astronauts who rode to space on the Crew 2 spaceship came back to Earth with their own legacy of work on hundreds of experiments. Here's a look at just some of their accomplishments during 199 days in space.
And liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour, and Crew 2.
The crew is go for ingress, and you can see Aki is the first to ingress onto the International Space Station.
We're so excited to be here. We're ready to get to work. There's a lot of great science, and we're just excited to learn and get started. The experiment that's taking up most of my time right now is called celestial immunity, and it's a really interesting experiment that involves looking at immune pathways. And I have an expert that's looking over my shoulder via camera, and she can talk with me kind of step by step as we go through the process.
That looks good, Megan.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sure I'll be talking to you again tomorrow.
Yes, you will.
Recently, I've been working on a really interesting educational experiment. It's called the blob. It's that crazy monocellular being that has no brain but can learn and can actually search food and solve mazes. It's pretty contained on the space station. Don't worry about it. It's very tiny. But so we're working on all kinds of endeavors like this, and every day, brings its lot of discoveries on the space station. That's very exciting.
We're tracking a full and good deploy of that solar array. So well done, both of you.
It's beautiful.
We're in a season now, actually, of doing cargo ops. We have 2 spacecraft that are attached to us that brought us cargo, and now we're packing them back up to get them ready for departure.
On board the International Space Station, we do help out some of the development of medicine. Without gravity, you get larger chunks of pure protein crystals.
What we're looking for today are needle-like structures. Perfect, there they are.
Well, it is a fantastic view that we have. We see the thin layer of atmosphere that's protecting all of you down on Earth. So just taking care of our planet has kind of been a change, maybe mentally, from seeing it from this perspective.
We are growing some chili peppers in the plant habitat here in the Japanese experiment module. It's one of the more complicated things that have been grown in space, and so they do take a little longer to come to fruition. So we're really hoping that we get to try some peppers before the end of our mission. Over the years, the capabilities of the laboratory have expanded and grown, along with the interest in doing this kind of research in low Earth orbit, which I think is really remarkable. So we are really kind of at the peak of that, I think. And so we've seen a little bit of everything, right? We've done human immune system research, so lots of research into medication formation, fluids research, combustion research, even robotics research, this huge range of different things that we've gotten to touch during our mission. And the way science works, as you know, is this is the building blocks for stuff to come. And so the results from these experiments will come out in the years to come, but they will also be the foundation of experiments that are designed in the following years. And so all of the research is going to be stuff that we get to say, oh, we had a little part of that. We got our hands on a little bit of that, which is a pretty neat feeling.
Some potential future crew members on the International Space Station also were the center of attention this week. As Leah noted a moment ago, NASA introduced a new class of 10 astronaut candidates who will begin training here at the Johnson Space Center next month. Take a look. These are the faces that you're going to be seeing from space and maybe from the Moon and Mars in the years to come.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we are introducing to you and to the world
My name is Luke Delaney. I'm a retired major from the Marine Corps. I'm working at NASA Langley as a research pilot, and I'm now an astronaut candidate.
NASA astronaut to me is explorer at heart. I think they're the very embodiment of it. You get to inspire people from all walks of life.
To me, it's somebody who's always challenging themselves and always trying to push the bounds of mankind.
I wanted to be an astronaut since I was a little kid. I grew up wanting to learn how to fly, learn how to go to space. So some of my earliest memories are of wanting to become an astronaut.
Since I was little, I've always had an affinity for the sky and for space and the stars, and so I set my sights as a very young child on getting here.
It is just a chance to explore and just keep pushing where we can go and what's possible and what people are capable of.
A NASA astronaut is an explorer. They get to go up and live in space and do research so that we can learn more about human spaceflight.
I think a NASA astronaut is the most visible part of a much larger team of individuals that are striving to improve humanity.
A NASA astronaut to me is an ambassador for the NASA organization as well as its mission.
We're really lucky to be sort of the tip of a huge organization that's all working together to try to achieve some pretty amazing things.
International Space Station crew members and astronaut candidates get focused training on how to operate station equipment, such as the Microgravity Sciences Glove Box, an enclosed space for experiments that involve potentially hazardous materials. In this Speedy Time segment, astronaut Peggy Whitson pulls the rack out of the wall in the Destiny Laboratory to show us how the MSG works.
Today, we wanted to talk to you about Microgravity Sciences Glove Box. We do all kinds of experiments in here. I've grown tissue culture cells. I've looked at how air and fluids separate. I've grown superconductor crystals in here, and they got up to over 700 degrees Fahrenheit. So this environment was to protect us from what was happening inside the experiment. Now I'm growing cells, and they have to be grown in a sterile environment. So now I'm protecting the cells from me by having them inside this environment. So it's very flexible, and we can change out all the experiments by opening up this big door on the front. Then once we've got the experiment set up inside, you can access from the sides, or we have this little airlock down here that if you wanted to, you could access from here as well. It's kind of like a transformer. At the end of the day, when you're done working with it, you just push it back into the rack. There we go, and it fits right in very nicely within the rack volume. The other thing that goes along with this, or is attached to this, is a microscope. We have a fantastic microscope with capability to send the videos and pictures down to the ground. The ground's been looking at the structures that are forming differently here in zero gravity. That's why they're doing the research here, is to see what new they can discover. So very cool science, very cool piece of hardware. Microgravity Sciences Glove Box.
Astronauts on the International Space Station spend some of their time doing science experiments, some of their time keeping their spaceship operating safely, and sometimes they help explain scientific concepts to students on Earth. In this demonstration video, one-time station commander Sonny Williams guides us as Mark Vande Hei and Jeff Williams use the weightless environment to explain Newton's first law of motion.
Hi, I'm Sonny Williams, and I'm an astronaut who's lived and worked aboard the International Space Station, an amazing research laboratory that's orbiting the Earth about 250 miles above us. While we're at the space station, we astronauts live and work in a microgravity environment. Do you think the laws of physics will hold up in the space station while experiencing microgravity? Let's check with NASA astronaut Mark Vande Hei on the International Space Station to find out.
Newton's first law of motion says an object at rest tends to stay at rest unless acted on by an outside force. Also, an object in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted on by an outside force, like my finger.
Let's look at this from another angle. Over time, the International Space Station slows down from experiencing a very small amount of drag, or force, from a tiny amount of atomic oxygen in space. This is like the force you feel from the air if you stick your hand out of a moving car. Because of this, the space station does what we call a reboost. A reboost uses rocket engines to put a force on the space station. This allows it to speed up just a little to remain in orbit around the Earth. Let's join NASA astronaut Jeff Williams to check out what happens to the objects inside the space station when it begins.
Now, the way I'm going to demonstrate the acceleration that comes during the reboost is by using this camera. 800 millimeter lens, so it's pretty massive actually. And you can see I can float it here, and there's no reboost going on right now, so the camera's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to slowly drift due to the ventilation, or if I put any velocity into it, it'll drift out of the scene. But I'm going to try to hold it here steady, and you can see that it stays very steady. There's my camera. I'm setting it up for ignition. There it goes. It actually came a little bit early. Now watch the camera accelerate toward you. There it goes. I'm going to reach out and grab it and bring it back in the view here. And I'm holding it. I'm actually feeling the acceleration. I'm going to let go again. And here it goes. It's going to take off. I'll try not to let it hit you. Just going to miss you. Yeah, I'm going to let go now. And here I go, drifting back toward you again. So the acceleration applies to me too. Reached our 2.7 meters per second that we desired, and now if I let go of the camera, it's not going anywhere, so the burn is over. Reboost complete. We'll stay in orbit for a little while longer.
Can you use Newton's first law to explain why the camera began moving without an astronaut putting a force directly on it? I'm going to send you back to class so you can start to investigate this with the Classroom Connection found at nasa.gov/demonstrations. Thanks for exploring a little physics on the space station with us today. See you again soon.
There is an instrument on the outside of the International Space Station that has been sifting through cosmic ray particles since 2011 to help us learn more about the origins of our universe. But the alpha magnetic spectrometer wasn't designed to operate that long, or to be repaired in space so it can continue its mission. But NASA's Exploration and In-Space Services Project Division at the Goddard Space Flight Center, along with some folks here at the Johnson Space Center, figured out how to do just that. And in today's Tech on Deck episode, they show us how they did it.
Before I started digging in that other bag, here you go. No problem.
If you need to fix something in space that wasn't designed to be fixed, it's going to take all the experience you can get. With that in mind, when the International Space Station's Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer, or AMS, needed repairs, NASA's Johnson Space Center and Goddard Space Flight Center used their joint expertise to make it happen. At Goddard, that expertise resides in NASA's Exploration and In-Space Services Division, or NEXUS, which evolved from the office that was responsible for the Hubble Space Telescope servicing missions. Key to these missions was the development of specialized tools. While you've probably heard of Hubble, you may not be as familiar with AMS, so let's start there. Designed for a 3-year mission of sifting through cosmic ray particles, AMS has been looking for signs of dark matter from its position on station since 2011. Hundreds of researchers have used the data collected to investigate the source of the mysterious substance to help us better understand the origins of the universe. To continue this important data collection, AMS needed an upgrade due to general wear and tear from the harsh environment of space, specifically a new cooling system. A repair could extend its life beyond what was originally planned. Sounds easy enough, right? In fact, due to the instrument's complexity and the fact that it was not designed to be repaired, even gaining access to the system to replace it was difficult. AMS's design did not incorporate the kinds of interfaces that make spacewalks easier, or have the ability to be serviced with traditional multi-purpose tools. And so, over the course of 4 years, NASA got to work designing and developing some of the most complex spacewalks since the Hubble servicing missions in the 90s and early 2000s to fix AMS.
the AMS tools themselves were unique. They were built specifically for this task, a task that was never intended to be performed on a spacewalk. And so that required a lot of thinking about how we were going to get inside so that we could access the tubes that we needed to cut into and then install the new thermal control system, but also how to put handling aids on it so that we had a place to attach our tethers, to attach our foot restraints, to have handholds, have a place to attach equipment that we needed out there.
NASA developed 20 specialized tools to make the job possible, and on November 15, 2019, astronauts Andrew Morgan and Luca Parmitano got to work. On this first spacewalk, astronauts needed to get access. By design, 5 of the tools could be seen floating off into space, attached to the debris shield that was removed to give the astronauts access to the heart of AMS.
The debris shield handling aid was one of the first tools that Luca installed on the EVA, and this gave us a handhold to install on the debris shield to work from, but also a handle for me to hold on to ultimately when we jettisoned it overboard to the aft side of the ISS, which was a lot of fun to do.
The astronauts continued with 3 more spacewalks over the next 2 months, using all of the specially designed tools. One such tool was the Tube Cutting Guide, which was a direct result of multiple practice sessions at Johnson Space Center facilities like the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. While practicing, astronauts communicated the need for a way to identify and verify the correct tubes to cut, since they all look the same to the astronauts' eyes within the spacesuit.
After we had removed the debris shield and the VSB cover, now we have the tubes exposed, and we actually had to cut into those tubes in order to pull out the correct ones to connect with the new thermal control system, the new pump. In order to do that, we had to be very sure of the tubes that we were cutting. These ingenious tube cutting guides installed over the top of the tubes and made sure that we knew and we were communicating correctly with the ground team to make sure that we were cutting the correct tube at the right time.
In January 2020, Luca Parmitano and Drew Morgan completed the 4th and final spacewalk to repair AMS. Because of their work and the ingenuity of tool designers and engineers, the instrument is now back in commission and able to continue to collect data about the origins of our universe for years to come.
People from Goddard and JC spend a lot of time developing these tools with their knowledge and the support of astronauts like Chris Cassidy. And we are very thankful that we were privileged to use those tools and to put them to very successful use. Thank you very much.
Its position 250 miles above Earth makes the International Space Station a great location for scientific research about this planet. This one, right here. And there's an instrument on board that gathers information about how plants on Earth sweat, which provides data to scientists who are monitoring the health of Earth's vegetation.
Sweating can be cool. Presented by Science at NASA. Did you ever notice how the air can seem cooler when you enter a forest? Humans aren't the only living things that sweat to cool off. When trees and plants sweat, they cool themselves and can cool the surrounding air. Through a process called transpiration, water and nutrients are taken up by plant roots from soil and delivered to the stem and leaves as part of photosynthesis. Some of the water drawn up through the roots exits the plants through pores or stomata in its leaves, hence the sweating. As this sweat evaporates, heat is removed from the air, providing a cooling effect. However, if there isn't enough water available or relative humidity gets too high, the stomata close. The plant heats up, ceases to grow, and can eventually die. Healthy plants provide a number of ecosystem services to humans, including food, recreation, and building materials. Plants also impact Earth's global water and carbon cycles, with plant transpiration accounting for around 10% of the moisture in our atmosphere. A new NASA mission called EcoStress, short for Ecosystem Spaceborne Thermal Radiometer Experiment on Space Station, was successfully launched to the International Space Station on June 29, 2018. EcoStress will literally study how plants sweat, providing the most detailed measurements of plant temperatures available from space and helping researchers monitor the health of Earth's vegetation. Your temperature is one of the first things a doctor wants to know when you go for a checkup, says Simon Hook, EcoStress principal investigator from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It tells your doctor a lot about your condition. Temperature is an extremely useful indicator for plants too. Temperature data can indicate if a plant is stressed and needs more water before the plant collapses, providing an early warning of a possible drought, explains Hook. EcoStress will be able to measure plant temperatures and therefore plant health over areas as small as an individual field of crops. The International Space Station is well suited for the EcoStress mission. Hook says, most Earth-observing satellites are in a sun-synchronous orbit, so they pass over an area at the same time each day, providing us a daily snapshot of that area. Because of the space station's orbit, EcoStress sees the same spot on Earth every few days at different times of day, so it can track changes throughout a typical day. If, during a hot, dry afternoon, plants stop releasing water to conserve supplies, EcoStress will see a change in temperature compared with previous measurements of the same area. It will detect these kinds of responses in farmers' fields and other ecosystems. Data acquired from EcoStress may, in time, help farmers develop crop watering protocols, give researchers a clearer understanding of the effects of drought, and assist water resource managers in planning effective water use. Its data could also reveal the effects of droughts on natural vegetation. For example, to help identify vulnerable types of trees. Forest managers and ecologists will be able to use this information to make better informed decisions. But that's not all. EcoStress temperature data will be useful in a whole host of ways, says Hook. We'll be able to use the same techniques developed to extract plant temperature to look at other phenomena such as the temperature of volcanoes, urban heat waves, wildfires, coastal currents, lakes, and more. That's a whole story in itself. Want to learn more about this cool mission? No sweat. Just visit science.nasa.gov.
Want another look at any of those stories we showed you today? Well, you can find them, all of them, on YouTube and Facebook at those addresses right there, along with lots of other great features on a wide variety of NASA topics. If you're looking for good conversation about human spaceflight, check out Houston, We Have a Podcast, our weekly show about all aspects of human spaceflight and NASA's missions of exploration. Today, Gary Jordan talks with Donna McKenzie and Steve Robinson of Third Rock Radio to learn more about the station celebrating its 10th anniversary of radio powered with NASA. Go to nasa.gov/podcasts for this week's episode and all our previous episodes. You'll also find the full library of all NASA podcasts, and you'll find them all on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud too. And you can get the latest from all over NASA delivered to you every week. Go to nasa.gov/subscribe to sign up for the NASA newsletter.